Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. And now, Tider Insider TV.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider Television. Across the studio from Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, as we are always working at a safe social distance these days, and that continues here on the program tonight. We got a great show on tap for you, and we begin with Alabama defeating Tennessee for the 14th consecutive time this past Saturday, extending the streak to when Nick Saban became the head coach of the Crimson Tide in 2007. He's never lost to UT as the head coach at UA, and only one time at LSU. Mac Jones earned SEC honors for a third time this season as Offensive Player in the Week in the game against the Volunteers, as he went 25 of 31 for 387 yards in the game, and was fantastic. Didn't have a passing TD, but he did score one on the ground. Najee Harris, 20 carries for 96 yards and 3 touchdowns. Receiving corps picked up the slack without Jalen Waddle. We'll get into that in a moment. 318 yards between Mechie Bolden and Smith. Malachi Moore picked up a fumble that was forced by Will Anderson early in the third quarter to really put the game out of reach with that touchdown right there. Will Reichard continued to kick the ball very well with place kicks with point afters and field goals. He hasn't missed a point after or field goal this year. Some younger players got in. Rodney, it was a complete football performance by Alabama. Other than the loss of Waddle, it went great.
You know what? We kind of were a little bit concerned that maybe coming off that emotional win over Georgia the week before that it might have an impact on Alabama in this game. But, you know, Gary, listen, one of the things you look for in that situation is what kind of maturity does the team show? And I think when you look at the offensive side of the ball, all those leaders that they have, Mac Jones, Najee Harris, Devontae Smith, that offensive line, all of those guys really stepped up. They produced, obviously, big time, and I think they showed a lot of maturity in this game. I thought the defense played pretty well for the most part. And
as I said, some younger players were able to get in the game, notably Bryce Young at quarterback, who I thought looked really, really good. Trey Sanders at running back. On defense, defensive lineman Tim Smith looking for a bigger role. Safety Brian Branch. So that's the good thing, to have a comfortable lead like that against a rival, because with no non-conference games, every week is you got to be willing to play your best players deep into the game. But Alabama was able to get a look at some of those younger guys.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity. It gave them a great opportunity to develop some experience with those guys. Of course, Tim Smith and Burrows played last week. Branch has played some as well. And, it was great to see Bryce Young. It's his third opportunity to play, Gary, but really only his second to kind of execute the offense some. I thought he played really well. But Tim Smith inside, number 50, thought he did a great job kind of plugging things up, Gary. Showed a lot of force there. Also, Jamil Burrows inside. I think those guys got really bright futures. There you see Brian Branch makes a great play on the ball, made a couple of other plays. I think he's going to be a fantastic player as time goes along.
So I mentioned Reichard is perfect so far on extra points and field goals. The punting situation, though, Rodney, although the good news is Bama doesn't punt often, but the punting situation seems to be an area where Alabama needs to get better.
Yeah, they made a change. It went from Sam Johnson to Charlie Scott, J.K.'s younger brother, in this game. And, Gary, I thought he did okay for the most part. I don't know exactly what his average was. I didn't check that. But most of his punts, he dropped down deep. But, again, Alabama really didn't have to punt that much.
That's the good news. All right, now to the bad news. Jalen Waddle went down on the opening kickoff return and broke his ankle. He is more than likely lost for the entire 2020 season. The next time we see him in a uniform will probably be in the NFL. Now, Alabama played the entire game without him, so basically they know that they can still be very productive, as Slade Bolden came in and had 6 receptions for 94 yards. So he was really good. But, the bottom line, Rodney, is this. You don't replace a guy like this. He's a special player. He's a once in a, every 20 or 30 year type of guy. But Alabama will have to go on without him, and they'll have to pick up the slack.
Yeah, they will. And I thought Slade Bolden stepped in really well. You mentioned that. He handled the punts really well, cleanly. Listen, Slade's a little bit different, obviously. Jalen Waddle has incredible skills, but Slade Bolden has his own talent. There's no question about that. And I think what you'll see is Steve Sarkisian kind of mold around that, develop the offense in terms of utilizing him in ways that he can be really effective. And listen, I think the guy Slade Bolden's underrated. I think a lot of people have kind of pegged him as a kind of a possession-type guy. I think he's got a little bit better speed. I know he's a great athlete. He was a tremendous high school player, played several different positions, Gary, at West Monroe, Louisiana. So I think Slade Bolden's got a chance to be really, really good. But also, they've got some young freshmen that may get an opportunity. Plus, they've got Xavier Williams. So, 3 or 4 guys there that maybe can get an opportunity. Yeah,
Slade, as you mentioned, played a lot of positions, including quarterback. Terrific athlete. Mac Jones now on the emotions that were involved with losing Jalen Waddle.
It's hard to go walk up to one of your closest friends and see him crying like that, just knowing that his season's kind of over and he doesn't know what his path looks like going forward. But just knowing Jalen for the past couple of years, he's one of the hardest workers I know, and he's going to bounce back from something like this, and that's kind of what I told him.
Love those pictures in the ambulance with his teammates. All right, Rodney, one more thought on Waddle, because he is such a vital player. You have to replace him at receiver, but also as your kick returner and your punt returner. Based on what we saw Saturday, it looks like Bolden will handle those duties as well. Well, and Brian Robinson back deep. That's right, on kickoffs. Yeah, on kickoffs. So we'll see. Again, they have an opportunity this week, Gary. There's a nice catch by Slade Bolden. They have an opportunity this week to kind of maybe investigate that, if you will. And then remember, after this week, they have an open week. There's an opportunity to continue to look and maybe perhaps make some changes if they need to. And I'm with you, though. Slade Bolden is a really, really fine player in his own right. Well, now it's time for Coach Talk. Mike Leach is known for his use of the air raid offense, and he's definitely put it to work at Mississippi State in his first season. Coach Saban knows that the air raid poses a threat to the Alabama defense, and they'll have to really work hard to prepare for this unique concept.
When you're that spread out on the field and they've got 5 guys going out for a pass all the time and you're horizontally stretched like you are, when you play man-to-man, if somebody gets beat, you got an issue. And when you play zone, you got a better chance to play inside out and break on the ball. All right, Ronnie, the air raid offense is back in the SEC for the first time that Leach was with Hal Mumme at Kentucky. It's really pretty simple. It's not a lot of different plays that they run, but when they get rolling, they kind of take what they give you, and then they bait you in maybe to go in man-to-man or coming up on the line of scrimmage, and they can take it over the top. Now, they began with splendid results against LSU, but the last 3 weeks, Rod, Mississippi State's really struggled on offense. Yeah, they're averaging 18 points a game, so they have kind of struggled there offensively, Gary. They average 357 passing it. They're averaging less than 30 yards a game running it. They just don't run it very often. But there you see the LSU game where, again, you mentioned they put up 44 on LSU in the first game, and since then haven't been as effective. LSU played them man-to-man, if you remember, Gary, and they just ate that alive. These other teams, Arkansas did a really nice job going zone on them. Kentucky, Texas A&M did a really good job on them, held them to -2 yards rushing, and, they weren't extremely effective overall offensively against a Texas A&M team that's really talented defensively. Yeah, still, though, you got to be ready. Mike Leach and Mississippi State coming off a bye. Now, that's Kylan Hill. He has, according to a report by Matt Zenitz from AL.com, decided to leave the team and prepare for the draft. So they didn't have him last week, and he's a big loss. He is their running game, basically, if they have one. So that could be a major setback for the Bulldogs. Well, still to come on Tider Insider Television, a major recruit decides to commit to Alabama. Find out why Kool-Aid will be headed to town. He's flavorful. And also, a former Alabama running back is the new spokesperson for Old Spice. That's coming up. And we'll be getting to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. The phone number is always 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or tweet at us using the hashtag TITV. We'll be right back with the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV.
But for the next 3 to 4 years, I'll be taking my talents to the University of Alabama.
Welcome back to TITV. I'm Gary Harris, sitting across the studio from Tider Insider's Rodney Orr. More now on what you just saw and heard. The Crimson Tide landed one of its top football recruiting targets on Sunday afternoon when Pinson Valley 5-star wide receiver and cornerback, which he'll probably play in college, that position, JaQuincy McKinstry committed to the Crimson Tide over Auburn and LSU. Kool-Aid said that he's been a lifelong Alabama fan. McKinstry built a strong relationship with Crimson Tide head coach Nick Saban, 6 feet, 175 pounds. He had a message for Alabama fans. I'm a winner, expect to continue winning. McKinstry also plans to play basketball for Nate Oates at Alabama. But right now, Rodney, let's focus on the football aspect. What potentially is he going to bring to this Alabama program?
Well, he's a very, very fluid, smooth athlete, Gary. I think, you know, we've talked about it on your radio show, so instinctive. Look at him on the offensive side. I mean, great ball skills, tremendous hands. You know what? Be honest with you, I like him as much as a receiver as I do as a corner, potential corner. Look, he can play both. That's how good he is. Really like him. I think he's deserving of the 5-star. I think that, and another thing I think is going to be really beneficial, Gary, a kid like this, being able to work with this program that they've got, Dr. Matt Ray, the speed and conditioning program that they do, training in terms of the development, I think that's going to be really beneficial for him.
We don't see very many two-sport athletes anymore, but Nick Saban and Nate Oates worked in unison recruiting Kool-Aid. J.D. Davison, the 5-star basketball commit, a close friend of Kool-Aid's. He recruited him as well. They've both signed off on this. Now, he will play football, and very simply, whenever the football season is over, he'll join the basketball team. I don't really think it'll be that big an issue for such a talented athlete.
Well, first of all, I think you made a great point. J.D. Davidson, the 5-star basketball recruit, certainly I think had an impact here. They're really close, and I think that it was something that really was helpful, his commitment to Alabama with McKinstry. So as far as, you know, listen, all you can do is give it a try, Gary. I mean, there's guys that have done it before, and he's certainly capable in both sports.
And Alabama really dominating in-state recruiting this year as far as the players that they've recruited and really wanted to get commitments from. Alabama women's soccer battled the LSU Tigers in some rainy conditions to a 3-3 draw in overtime on Friday night. Alabama earned a conference point on the road and moved its record to 1-3-2 in the standings. Still disappointing, though, to some degree. Alabama had a 3-1 lead, but LSU came back to get the draw. Alabama will host its final home match of the 2020 season, October 30th. That's Friday night when the Texas A&M Aggies come to Tuscaloosa. That will air at 7 p.m. on the SEC Network Plus. Well, coming up on Tider Insider Television, Derrick Henry gives a new meaning to clean breakaway. We'll let you know what we're talking about when we come back. And up next, your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, if you want to get through to the program, call now at 205-348-9882, or you can email us or tweet at us. Either one, we'll be looking for those as well. We'll be right back with more.
When I break a long run, I'm talking long. That's why I use Triple Protection Old Spice Sweat Defense.
There he goes. Tennessee Titans star Derrick Henry is unstoppable. He's the new spokesman for Old Spice. Here's what Old Spice says, explaining why the former Crimson Tide star is perfect as a pitchman for its product. Quote, whether he's stiff-arming Sweat or starting a charity to help today's youth, just try to stop him and you'll find out that he's unstoppable. Love that, man. So cool. What a great guy and a terrific football player. All right, Rodney, let's head to the phone lines. First up is our pal Sammy up in Walker County. Good evening, Sammy. How are you?
Thanks, Gary, Rodney. Great to talk to y'all guys. And first, let me say something about Jalen Waddle. We all know what a great talent he is, probably the best talent on the whole squad. God-given ability, just tremendous. You hate to lose a player of that magnitude, and we hope for a speedy recovery. But I want to comment on the calls or the lack of call of targeting on Devontae Smith. And I don't know what those referees that checked the film out, I don't know what, speaking of Kool-Aid, I don't know what Kool-Aid they were drinking. But if I wasn't targeted, just like the commentator said, he didn't know what it was. And also, Najee Harris, he was a little upset when he ran that one in. He actually, I watched the playback. He crossed it. He broke the plane, and you know they didn't give him the touchdown. But
all right,
that was
Sammy.
bad on Devontae.
Yeah. You know, listen, there's been a lot of talk about officiating, and I've done my share of it. I'm not going to lie to you. Now, having said that, I'm going to defend him a little bit. It's tough, man. It's just a tough job and real speed. And, I thought it was targeting on Devontae Smith. You know, they missed it. They didn't see it that way. I mean, it happens. You got to you know, you got to deal with it. Calls are part of the game, and I like Nick Saban's philosophy. Unlike some coaches in this league, you know, he doesn't spend a lot of time belly aching and crying about it. You know, the call comes whether it favors you or doesn't. You got to go in and play the next play, and I think that's one reason Alabama's been so successful, Rodney, is they haven't got hung up in a lot of this officiating controversy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you in terms of going on to the next play. I will say this, Sammy, I think you're 100% right. I mean, it's, you know, again, maybe I don't understand targeting completely, but it certainly looked like a textbook targeting to me. As far as Najee's play, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I thought he was clearly in. I'm surprised that they didn't review that, but they didn't. The good thing is that Alabama did score.
Yeah, but there are going to be missed calls every week. Unfortunately, this season, not involving Alabama necessarily, but some other games, there have been some calls that have been huge calls that were not correct, that have directly impacted outcomes of games. All right, let's go down to Moundville and talk with Dale. Good evening, Dale. How are you?
Hey, Rodney. How y'all and Gary? How y'all doing? I'm just concerned a little bit about our defense, especially defensive front. And I was wondering who are we targeting on the defensive line? And then I would like to comment. I hope Javian Baker gets a chance this week. And then Tim Keenan. I just wondered, do y'all know the extent of his injury?
All right, start with defensive line recruiting, Rodney. Tim Keenan's one of them. They've already gotten some commitments, and I think they got to put together a really good defensive line class.
Yeah, I think, you know, last year, this year, well, they got Tim Smith, Jamil Burrows. Hey, don't forget about Jamarian Latham, the local area kid. I think he's going to be really good down the road. And then 2 years ago, these guys are sophomores now. You're seeing Byron Young playing really well. You know, some of the other players from that class, Justin Aboybe starting. You know, in this year's class, they're doing really well. Monkel Goodwine's an outstanding player. You know, Damon Payne is a five-star type player out of Michigan. I think they're doing really well, and I'm not sure that they're done. They're in on 3 or 4 outstanding defensive linemen here down the stretch. They may get 1 or 2 of those guys, and it's going to be another top defensive line class.
Ronnie, speaking of Keenum, he took a helmet to the knee. It was really, speaking of kind of cheap shots, but do you know how long he's out?
Well, I know that we had a reporter at the game, TiderInsider.com, and he told us that he expected to be back for the playoffs.
Okay, well, that's good. Yeah. And Javon Baker, he may get an opportunity. A lot of these young receivers might, right?
Yeah, Javon Baker's one of those 3 freshmen I mentioned earlier. Javon Baker, Trayshawn Holden. I think both those guys got in late, Gary, against Tennessee. Tyu Jones-Bell's a really explosive player. It's a true freshman. So we'll see. Maybe one of those guys can earn some time.
All right, more phone calls and tweets are coming up here on the program, so you'll want to make sure and go ahead and get through now on our phone line at 205-348-9882. We'll be right back with more TITV right after this. Well, former University of Alabama golfer Justin Thomas has turned his attention to winning the Masters next month after falling just short in his title challenge at the Zozo Championship. The world number 3 took a 1-shot lead into the final round at the Sherwood Country Club in California, but had to settle for a share of second with John Rahm as Patrick Cantlay posted a 7 under 65 to claim a 1-stroke win at 23 under. Thomas and Rahm were 22 under. Thomas birdied the last to close out his final round at 3 under 69. As I said, he shared that spot with John Rahm. The 27-year-old admitted he struggled to stay mentally sharp during the final day in California, but still, tied for second, not bad. All right, let's get right back to the phone line. CB is with us right here in Tuscaloosa. Hey, CB.
Hey, man, y'all looking sharp tonight with that outfit, y'all.
We didn't plan it. We did not plan it.
I tell you, looking good, though, right color, you know. I know, of course, Mac Jones, boy, he got going. He may not be here next year, and some of his other players, there's several of them. So, you know, if they want to. Well, what about Tyson? Is he out of the picture, or might get some back? Ain't much backup playing, or next year? Or what's the outlook on him?
CB,
you know?
I like him a lot, and I mean, I think Mac Jones is perfect proof that you don't have to play your second year. You know, he didn't play till late in his 3rd year. I think Jalen came in here, had to play as a true freshman. Tua got here and was ready to play, but for the most part, since Nick Saban has been here, they've played older quarterbacks, and that with Jalen and Tua back-to-back was kind of an anomaly, more so than what has been the norm. And I think over time, Rodney, Mark Tyson has a chance to, establish himself and develop into a super quarterback.
Well, Gary, think about
Paul Tyson, by the way.
Think about this. A.J. McCarron didn't play until his 3rd year. I mean, and A.J. was really highly touted. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of sometimes development, you have guys in front of you, but it gives you an opportunity to develop. And then when your opportunity comes, certainly you're better prepared. And I think we've seen that with Mac Jones.
Yeah, and Paul Tyson has all the measurables. 6'5", 6'6", 235 pounds, big arms. So just watch for him down the road, CB. All right, we're going to take another phone call here. Jimmy is with us. Hey, Jimmy, how are you?
Good. I'm calling about that receiver from Indiana, top-rated receiver. Who he commit to?
Ron, you know anything about a wide receiver from Indiana?
As far as Alabama's concerned, I'm not really sure who you're referring to.
You have a name for him, Jimmy?
I think he's number one receiver or number two receiver in the country.
Actually, the number one receiver in the country is actually from the state of Washington, probably going to pick Ohio State. But as far as Alabama's concerned, Alabama does have commitments from three top receivers, three of the top 10 receivers, really. When you look at Ja'Cory Brooks is a five-star player out of the Miami area. Ajay Hall's another outstanding player in the state of Florida. And Christian Leary, Gary, three of the top four wide receivers in the state of Florida are committed to Alabama.
All right, I'm going to have to look that one up, a wide receiver from Indiana. But I'm not saying it's not the case, but I'm not familiar with him. All right, we'll be right back with TITV after this. All right, welcome back to Tider Insider TV. It's prediction time. Rodney, Alabama's a 32.5-point favorite on Saturday night against Mississippi State.
Yeah, you know, Gary, listen, believe it or not, Mississippi State, we talk about their offense with the Pirate, but, hey, they're like the top team in the SEC in terms of total yardage defensively. They only give up 295 yards a game, but listen, Texas A&M had a lot of success running the ball on them, ran for 188. I think Alabama's offensive line can really take control of this game. I think Mac Jones can have a big game. I'm going Alabama big, Gary, 44-17.
You know, I'm with you, and I think Mississippi State's defense is pretty good too. The thing that surprises me, and we just picked winners here, but is the 32.5 points. That's a lot of points to give to a team that's played pretty good defense. I think Alabama wins the game comfortably too. I think that 32.5 number is too large. I think that Alabama wins at 38-13. I do think Mississippi State's defense will hold Alabama down some. You know, when 38's being held down, you know how good you are. But I'll take them 38-13. All right, thanks for tuning in. A reminder, if you missed the program or want to catch it again, replay tonight at 10:30 here on WVUA 23, and you can catch it anytime at WVUA23.com. For Rodney Orr, I'm Gary Harris. Thanks for watching TITV. Have a good night, everybody.